Have you ever wondered why your grocery bill keeps climbing even though you're buying the same exact things? You walk into the store, you grab your usual items. Nothing fancy, nothing different, but somehow the total at checkout makes you wince every single time. Here's what nobody talks about. That rising cost? It's not just inflation. It's not corporate greed. It's something way more complex and fascinating. It's an invisible web that connects your local grocery store to factories in China, shipping routes in the Pacific Ocean, and fuel prices in the Middle East. Here at Simple Money, we've been tracking how global events translate into your everyday expenses. And what we've discovered will completely change how you see that receipt in your hand. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how a shipping container stuck in a port halfway around the world can make your coffee more expensive tomorrow morning. Here's what's really happening. When you buy something at a store, you're not just paying for that item. You're paying for an incredibly complex journey that item took to reach you. And I mean incredibly complex. Think about a simple t-shirt. That cotton was probably grown in India, then shipped to Bangladesh where it was spun into fabric. Then the fabric went to Vietnam where it was cut and sewn. Then the finished shirt was packaged and loaded onto a container ship. That ship crossed the Pacific Ocean to Los Angeles. Then the shirt was trucked to a distribution center in Ohio. Then trucked again to your local store. Then you bought it. That's 7 different countries or locations. Multiple forms of transportation. Dozens of companies involved. Hundreds of workers. Thousands of miles traveled. All so you could buy a $20 t-shirt. And here's the wild part. Every single step in that journey has a cost. Fuel costs, labor costs, storage costs, insurance costs, regulatory costs. And when any of those costs go up at any point in that chain, guess what happens to the price of your t-shirt? But it gets more interesting. Because you're not just connected to that one supply chain, you're connected to all of them, simultaneously. Your breakfast this morning involved supply chains from at least 5 different countries. Your commute to work relied on a global oil supply chain. The phone in your pocket contains materials from over 30 countries. You are living at the endpoint of thousands of interconnected global supply chains. And most people have no idea this web even exists, let alone how it affects their wallet every single day. The first way supply chains hit your wallet is what I call the domino price effect. This one is sneaky because the connection isn't obvious at first, but once you see it, it's everywhere. Here's how it works. Supply chains aren't isolated. They're interconnected. When something gets more expensive in one supply chain, it ripples out and affects dozens of others, like dominoes falling. Except these dominoes are making everything you buy more expensive. Let me give you a concrete example. Fuel prices go up. Okay, you expect gas to cost more. That's obvious. But here's what you don't see coming. That higher fuel price affects the cost of shipping everything. Every container ship, every truck, every delivery van now costs more to operate. So suddenly, everything that gets shipped becomes more expensive. Your bananas from Ecuador, your furniture from North Carolina, your clothes from wherever, all of it gets a price increase. Not because the banana itself costs more to grow, but because it costs more to move it from Ecuador to your store. But wait, it keeps going. Those higher shipping costs mean retailers are paying more, so they raise prices. But they're also businesses that need supplies shipped to them, so their costs go up too, which means they have to raise prices again. The domino effect multiplies on itself. And here's where it gets really insidious. Those higher prices affect workers' cost of living. So workers demand higher wages to keep up. Companies have to pay those higher wages, which increases production costs, which leads to higher prices again. The dominoes just keep falling. One increase in fuel prices can trigger hundreds of price increases across completely unrelated products. Your coffee, your toilet paper, your laptop, your haircut, everything becomes more expensive because everything is connected through these supply chains. The second factor is what I call the bottleneck multiplier. This one is particularly cruel because it shows how one small problem can create massive financial consequences for you. Think of a supply chain like a highway. When traffic is flowing smoothly, everything works fine. But what happens when there's a bottleneck? A construction zone, an accident, one lane closed. Suddenly, the entire highway backs up. Miles and miles of cars sitting still, all because of one small blockage. Supply chains work exactly the same way. And the scary part? There are bottlenecks everywhere. ports that can only unload so many ships per day, factories that can only produce so many units per month, truck drivers who can only work so many hours, warehouses that can only store so much inventory. When everything is working normally, these bottlenecks are manageable. But when something goes wrong, the entire system seizes up, and you pay for it, literally. Remember when that huge container ship got stuck in the Suez Canal? It blocked the canal for 6 days. 6 days. That's it. But that 6-day delay affected supply chains for months. Months. Because that bottleneck created a cascade of delays that rippled through the entire global system. Products couldn't get to their destinations on time. Factories ran out of materials. Store shelves went empty. And prices shot up. Not because the products themselves were more valuable, but because the bottleneck created artificial scarcity. When supply drops and demand stays the same, prices rise. Economics 101. And here's what makes this even worse. Companies know about these bottlenecks, so they try to avoid them by ordering earlier, by storing more inventory, by using faster shipping, all of which costs more money. Money that gets passed on to you through higher prices. You're not just paying for the actual bottleneck, you're paying for the fear of future bottlenecks. That's the multiplier effect, the risk premium built into everything you buy. The third impact is the complexity tax. And this one might surprise you because it sounds counterintuitive, but global supply chains have made products cheaper in one way while making them more expensive in another. Here's what I mean. A company can manufacture products cheaper by using global supply chains. They source materials from the cheapest suppliers worldwide. They produce in countries with lower labor costs. They optimize every step to minimize direct costs. And theoretically, this should make products cheaper for you, right? Wrong. Because that complexity comes with hidden costs that nobody talks about. Coordination costs, management costs, risk mitigation costs, quality control across continents, time delays, communication challenges, multiple currencies, different regulations in different countries. Every additional link in the supply chain adds complexity, and complexity adds cost, not obvious cost, hidden cost. The kind that slowly creeps into prices without anyone noticing. Think about it this way. Imagine you're planning a dinner party. If you're cooking everything yourself in your own kitchen, it's pretty straightforward. But now imagine coordinating 15 different people cooking different dishes in different kitchens across town, and you have to get everything to arrive at your house hot and at the same time. That's way more complicated. And complications cost money. You need more communication, more planning, more coordination. More things can go wrong. You need backup plans, insurance, contingencies. All of that adds up. Global supply chains are like that dinner party times 1,000,000. The complexity is staggering, and somebody has to pay for managing that complexity. That somebody is you. Through higher prices, baked into everything you purchase. The fourth factor is what I call the geopolitical premium. This one is becoming more important every year. And most people don't connect their grocery bill to international politics, but they should, because they're directly linked. Here's the reality. Supply chains cross borders, and borders are controlled by governments, and governments don't always get along. Trade disputes, tariffs, sanctions, political tensions, all of these directly affect supply chains, which directly affects your costs. When two countries get into a trade dispute, they often impose tariffs. Tariffs are basically taxes on imported goods. And who pays those taxes? The companies importing the goods. And how do companies respond? They raise prices. So you end up paying the tariff, not the foreign country. You. But it's not just tariffs. Political instability in a region can disrupt supply chains. Companies have to find alternative sources, alternative routes, alternative suppliers. All more expensive, all passed on to you. The semiconductor shortage is a perfect example. Taiwan produces a huge percentage of the world's advanced computer chips. But there's political tension between Taiwan and China. That tension creates risk. Companies have to plan for that risk. They build redundancies, they diversify suppliers, they pay premiums for guaranteed supply. All of those risk mitigation strategies cost money. And that money comes from higher prices on everything that uses semiconductors. Which is basically everything electronic. Your phone, your car, your appliances, all more expensive because of geopolitical risk you probably don't even think about. And here's what makes this particularly frustrating. You have zero control over it. You can't vote in foreign elections. You can't influence trade policy. You can't reduce geopolitical tensions. But you pay for all of it anyway, through a hidden premium on nearly everything you buy. The fifth and final impact is the last mile paradox. This one is ironic because it shows how the cheapest part of the supply chain might actually be the most expensive part for you. Here's what I mean. A product can travel 10,000 miles across oceans for relatively cheap. Container ships are incredibly efficient. They can move thousands of tons of cargo for just a few cents per pound. That's why global shipping is economically viable. But that last mile, from the distribution center to your house, that's expensive, really expensive, because it's inefficient. One truck delivering to one location, or 20 different locations spread across a city. Small quantities, multiple stops, human drivers, traffic, parking, time. The irony is that moving a product from China to California might cost less than moving it from a warehouse to your doorstep. The last mile can cost more than the first 10,000 miles. That's the paradox. And with the rise of online shopping and same-day delivery expectations, this cost has exploded. Companies are competing on delivery speed. Faster delivery means higher costs. More trucks, more drivers, more warehouses closer to customers, more complexity. Who pays for all that convenience? You do. Sometimes directly through delivery fees, but more often indirectly through higher product prices, because companies build those costs into their pricing. They have to. Otherwise, they can't offer the delivery options customers now expect. And here's the kicker. You probably don't even appreciate how expensive this convenience is. Because it's normalized. You expect free 2-day shipping, free returns, same-day delivery, but none of that is actually free. It's just hidden in the prices you pay for products. But here's what nobody wants to admit. The global supply chain system is fundamentally fragile. It's optimized for efficiency, not resilience. For decades, companies focused on making supply chains as cheap as possible. Just-in-time inventory, minimal warehousing, single sourcing from the cheapest supplier. This worked great when everything ran smoothly. But when something goes wrong, the entire system is vulnerable. And things go wrong constantly. Pandemics, natural disasters, political conflicts, cyber attacks, labor strikes, climate change, the list goes on. And every time something goes wrong, prices spike. Because the system has no cushion, no buffer, no backup. It's like driving a car with no shock absorbers. Every bump in the road you feel directly. Every disruption in supply chains you feel directly in your wallet. Companies are starting to realize this. They're adding redundancy, building resilience, diversifying suppliers, reshoring some production, creating bigger inventories. All smart moves for stability, but all expensive moves. And guess who pays for building that resilience? You do, through higher prices. The uncomfortable truth is that we might be entering an era of permanently higher costs, not just temporary inflation, but a structural shift. As companies prioritize resilience over pure efficiency, costs go up. As geopolitical tensions rise, costs go up. As climate change creates more disruptions, costs go up. Your cost of living isn't just responding to today's supply chain. It's responding to companies preparing for tomorrow's disruptions. You're paying now for problems that haven't even happened yet. That's the hidden cost of living in an interconnected but fragile global system. Let me tell you about Jennifer. Jennifer is 35. She makes $65,000 a year. She's always considered herself financially stable. She budgets carefully. She tracks her spending. She's not extravagant. But over the past 2 years, she feels like she's drowning. Her grocery bill has gone up by 40%. Her rent increased. Her car insurance went up. Gas costs more. Even her favorite shampoo costs more now. She's buying the same things. Living the same lifestyle. But somehow she's falling behind. She's had to dip into savings multiple times just to cover regular expenses. Here's what Jennifer doesn't realize. She's blaming herself. She thinks she's doing something wrong. She's trying to budget harder, cut more expenses, maybe skip the occasional coffee. But she's fighting the wrong battle. Jennifer doesn't understand that her cost of living increase isn't about her choices. It's about global supply chains she doesn't even know exist. That shipping disruption in Asia? It made her groceries more expensive. That trade dispute with China? It made her electronics more expensive. That fuel shortage? It made everything more expensive. She thinks it's a personal finance problem. But it's actually a global economics problem. And no amount of budgeting or cutting back will solve a problem that's rooted in forces completely outside her control. She's trying to bail out a sinking boat without realizing there's a hole in the bottom. Jennifer feels frustrated and powerless. And honestly, who can blame her? She's doing everything right according to traditional personal finance advice, but it's not working because the game has changed, and nobody told her the rules are different now. Now, let me tell you about David. David is also 35, makes about the same money as Jennifer. He's also feeling the pressure of rising costs, but David is handling it differently. He's not drowning. He's not dipping into savings. He's actually okay. What's the difference? David understands something Jennifer doesn't. He understands that he can't control global supply chains, but he can control how he responds to them. He's adjusted his approach to match the new reality. Here's what David does differently. First, he stopped thinking in terms of fixed prices. He knows prices fluctuate based on supply chain conditions, so he shops strategically. When shipping costs are high, he avoids products that come from far away. He buys more local products, more seasonal produce, things that don't rely on complex global supply chains. Second, David pays attention to the news differently, not obsessively, but strategically. When he hears about a shipping disruption, he knows prices will rise soon. So, he stocks up on non-perishable items before prices jump. He's not hoarding, he's just timing his purchases based on predictable supply chain impacts. Third, David diversified his purchasing. He uses multiple stores, multiple brands, multiple sources. When one supply chain has problems and prices spike, he switches to alternatives. He's not loyal to brands or stores, he's loyal to value, and he's flexible enough to adjust based on what's actually available and affordable. Fourth, David built a buffer. He keeps a larger pantry than he used to, more household supplies. Not extreme, just enough that he's not forced to buy when prices are high. He can wait out temporary price spikes. That flexibility saves him hundreds of dollars a year. And fifth, David adjusted his expectations. He knows the era of constantly decreasing prices is over. He budgets for increasing costs. He plans for disruption. He's not surprised when prices go up, because he understands the system, and understanding removes the emotional stress. The difference between Jennifer and David isn't income. It's not discipline. It's not even really about specific tactics. It's about understanding. David sees the invisible web of supply chains. Jennifer doesn't. That awareness changes everything. Here's what most people don't realize. Your cost of living isn't just about your personal choices anymore. It's about global systems you're connected to whether you know it or not. And those systems are increasingly volatile, increasingly complex, increasingly expensive to maintain. The old personal finance advice assumed a stable world, predictable prices, steady costs, small, manageable inflation. But that's not the world we live in anymore. We live in a world where a factory fire in Taiwan can make your car more expensive, where a drought in California affects your food costs even if you live in New York, where political tensions halfway around the world show up in your monthly budget. It's not actually about budgeting better or cutting expenses. It's about understanding the forces shaping your costs and adapting accordingly. The people who thrive financially in this new reality aren't the ones with the strictest budgets. They're the ones who understand the system and work with it instead of against it. You can't opt out of global supply chains. They're everywhere, in everything. But you can become aware of them. You can understand how they work. You can anticipate disruptions. You can make strategic choices based on that knowledge. The domino price effect, the bottleneck multiplier, the complexity tax, the geopolitical premium, the last mile paradox. These aren't abstract economic concepts. They're forces actively shaping how much you pay for everything. Right now, today, every time you shop. But here's the empowering part. Once you understand these forces, they become less scary, less mysterious. You stop blaming yourself for rising costs you can't control. And you start making smarter decisions based on how the system actually works. You start asking different questions. Where did this product come from? How complex is its supply chain? Is this price spike temporary or structural? Are there alternatives with simpler supply chains? Can I wait out this disruption? These questions lead to better choices, choices that save real money. Your cost of living is influenced by global forces. That's just reality. But your response to those forces? That's completely under your control. And that response makes all the difference between feeling helpless and feeling empowered. The question isn't whether global supply chains will keep affecting your costs. They will. The question is whether you'll understand how they work well enough to navigate them strategically, or whether you'll keep wondering why everything keeps getting more expensive despite your best efforts. Global supply chains aren't going away. They're becoming more complex, more interconnected, more vulnerable to disruption, which means their impact on your wallet will only grow. But knowledge is power, and now you have the knowledge. What you do with it, that's up to you.